Welcome in live from the 2022 NFL Combine here in Indianapolis, Indiana. It is the Buck Reising Show. It's my show. Welcome in on 104.5 The Zone. We're here with you until 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica's back in Network Control Studios, making things happen today. I got Kirby Allen Kirby with me, telling me horror stories before I'm getting ready to go on air. Has me rattled before the show even starts. Will Bowling making it happen digitally and producing all manner of great social media content. We got the full crew up here thanks to our friends at Scoreboard Bar and Grill, the best place for you to enjoy food, drinks, sports, live music. Go check it out in Music Valley. Scoreboard Bar and Grill, making all of our off-season NFL coverage possible. You want to jump in on the show, we'd love to have your participation. 615-737-1045. That's the number, 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like, because there is a ton to talk about of local interest in what the Tennessee Titans are going to have to set out to do throughout the course of this offseason to get this thing back on track as best as humanly possible. And today, probably the most interesting day as it relates to Titans fans, because quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends, all available at the podium today. Several who I've already spoken to, because we've been at this since, 7 a.m. Central Time when they started trotting the draft picks or the draft prospects out to speak with us, and got a lot of good information to share with you guys over the course of our 3 hours together. John Robinson, Titans general manager, is going to come hang out with us before he meets with the local media, which I'm sure I've stuck a knife in the side of some of my Titans media comrades by scooping the GM before his podium availability, but he'll join us at 11:30, so make sure you're hanging out for that. A lot of great guests are going to stop by the table as well. It's good to be back at the Combine. Good to have things feeling semi-normal again as we kind of go through this draft evaluation process and find out more about what these prospects, who these guys are, which is basically what the teams are here to do. Obviously, there's several guys who have already met with the Tennessee Titans, and there will be more guys who meet with the Titans over the course of this week, both the informal interviews and the formal interview process, and just trying to get a feel for how these young men fit the culture and, most importantly, the scheme of what it is that Mike and John are trying to build with the Tennessee Titans. From my standpoint, the thing that I'm most curious to know, and the thing that I want to talk to John Robinson in detail about today, is what is the urgency as far as wide receiver, just skill position players. Skill position players are concerned. If Mike Vrabel's going to tell us at the end of the season that we need to be great, we being the Tennessee Titans, we need to be great around our quarterback. Well, I'm perfectly willing to accept that as an answer, but what is the plan looking like? How is the plan going to develop to be great around Ryan Tannehill? And with the quarterbacks in particular, the complexities around this draft class at that position, a lot of that is going to continue to flesh itself out over the coming days as they get ready to work out, because there is no clear and obvious QB1 in this draft class. You may hear that and think that that presents opportunities for the Titans to be able to start to plan for the succession at that position. And I may have a differing opinion on that based on what this year looks like. But we're certainly going to talk about it over the course of today's show. In speaking to a bunch of different players today, particularly guys like John Mechie out of Alabama, we met with Treylon Burks, the wide receiver out of Arkansas. I know Will was over there at the Ohio State tight end Jeremy Ruckert's media availability and kind of discussing his skill set, how he fits, and basically the quote being, I want to get after people and do my job the right way, which basically sounds, that sounds like it would fit a got to coach better, got to play better type of system that Mike Vrabel wants to have these guys bought in on. But so many different skill sets available, and really, I think what we're going to learn this week is, does John Robinson and their scouting staff have a type as far as wide receivers specifically are concerned? The debate being, do you continue to draft to the kind of guy that you've brought in, where they're all big-bodied guys, all value the ability to block downfield, to create explosive plays for the running backs because of the willingness of the wide receivers to block, and how far are you willing to get off of type, basically to address things like, just pure team speed, which right now they have play speed in A.J. Brown, but they do not necessarily have the kind of speed that makes you remove that extra defender from the box, because you've got to account for somebody who's going to be trying to get behind the safeties. This is basically the conversation that is going to be had all week long. With everything that's well, by the way, speaking of news here at the Combine, because this is going to be rumor mill central at this point. A lot of deals are going to get done, a lot of deals for coaches and GMs, a lot of the bones, the structures of deals for free agents, and seeing how people's draft strategies are going to pan out. Lucas just sent me this tweet from the Arizona Cardinals. They have extended both GM Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury. Both are now under contract with the team through the 2027 season. That's nuts to me. That's absolutely wild. I understand that Arizona has had some success. We can talk about this, because basically the conversation around Cliff Kingsbury is he the guy to continue to elevate that franchise? But again, this is the place where the business of the league gets done in full force, and the results of that, the ripple effects of the Combine, are going to continue to play themselves out over the course of the next couple of weeks. So we'll get into it with you. We'd love to have your participation as well. And what we're going to talk about coming up next is basically, will the Titans commit to upgrading their skill positions? Be curious to know whether that's the position that you prioritize, or if we're basically having a mutated version of the Joe Burrow debate from last year, right? Where the question for the Cincinnati Bengals was, do you draft an offensive lineman to help protect the quarterback, giving him additional time to get the ball to the fantastic wide receivers, or do you take the exceptional wide receiver and hope to God the quarterback can make a play and avoid the pressure that he is undoubtedly going to be under? That's basically the same conversation that we're having around Ryan Tannehill, right? Because the only quarterback who was sacked nearly as often as Joe Burrow last year was, of course, number 17 in two-tone blue. Offensive line is going to be a priority, and this is a draft that has a lot of good talent at that position, both sides of the trenches, offensive and defensive line. So what we're going to talk about coming up next is, are the Titans willing to commit to upgrading their skill position players, or is the preference to kind of build from the trenches up? Your phone calls on this as well. Happy to have you guys in Indianapolis with me at the NFL Scouting Combine, presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. 622, Indianapolis, Indiana. The stars are out. Coach Dave McGinnis making the rounds. Everybody wants to stop and talk to Coach Mack. We'll do that on Friday. The man's got people to see, players to scout, all manner of good stuff. Don't forget, John Robinson is going to join us at 11:30 Central Time. We'll get the GM's thoughts before he takes the podium today and meets with the rest of our Media Vulture colleagues. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation if you like. Now, I know it's going to be NFL heavy today, but for all the time that we spent on basketball yesterday, Lucas, we have to talk about what the hell happened to Vanderbilt at some point. Dear God. I mean, just dear God. Like, I was excited to have Jerry Stackhouse on. I would obviously take Jerry Stackhouse on the show again, but we're pumping up. Get to West End. Go see basketball on a Tuesday night. It's March officially. Enjoy yourselves. And then they just, heartbreaker against Florida at a Memorial Gym. We'll spend some time on that later. I was laughing at a tweet from our friend Carmen Vitale at the Draft Network. The scrum, she says, waiting for Pitt quarterback Kenny Pickett, who I guess is just kind of default QB1. He was supposed to go on the podium at 10:30. It's now 10:52. And Paul Papps from the Dan Patrick Show says, clock management issues, red flag, immediately. Draft stocks already tanking after one podium appearance or lack thereof. No, he eventually did make it. Wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends meeting with the media today. The workouts getting underway throughout the course of this week. So two players, and I had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of players, particularly wide receivers, because obviously Titans going to be in the market for that this time around. Two in particular that I really enjoyed catching up with. John Mechie, first and foremost, out of Alabama. And basically, I mean, he's been one of the more enjoyable players to talk to so far. It can be a bit of an awkward interaction with the way that they have these combine podiums set up for the players, and even worse if you're not a player on a main podium, like, for example, Velus Jones Jr. was not, and they just have him shuffled off to the side on a table on his own where different players' press conferences are like drowning him out. It was unfortunate because I was looking forward to catching up with him and did for a little bit, but not in a way that we could have used the audio. But John Mechie was asked specifically about, a fellow Alabama product in Julio Jones and how much passion he takes in the art of run blocking. Because as a wide receiver, even coming from a system like Alabama, he understands the importance of that at the NFL level.
Where does what come from?
The desire and ability to get it done downfield blocking.
Oh, because it's part of football. It's part of football. Playing without the ball is just as important as playing with the ball, especially for your offense. Especially creating big plays in the run game. It's really the DB. It's really blocking on the secondary that creates those big plays. So I think it's just pride in being a football player, really.
So that's John Mechie talking with the media about an hour ago. At this point, to be able to make plays with the ball in your hand, you have to make plays without the ball in your hand, it's like somebody took it straight from a Mike Vrabel, John Robinson script. No? As soon as I put that video out there, I started seeing people quote tweeting it with pictures of John on the phone, looking overjoyed at the idea that he's found the exact wide receiver that fits his system. And really for John, the importance of this particular week, more than any other, because each phase of the offseason, for lack of a better term, has its own level of importance, right? It's all a critical piece to the ultimate whole as you work your way through the roster construction process. But for the Combine, and for the Titans in particular, with how they've basically gone about this thing in a way that for first-round picks, you can find value as far as players dealing with injury or coming off injury are concerned, as long as you feel and your medical staff feels that would be the case. Now, that's not what I'm talking about with John Mechie, but for this exercise as a whole, this 5 days that we're going to be up here covering the NFL Combine, this is going to be a big part of the conversation, basically. Do the medicals check out, and can you get yourself in a place where you can talk yourself into the idea of picking a talented player that might otherwise not be there based on his injury status alone. 615-737-1045. Would love to have your guys' opinion on this draft class right now. Where do you think the Titans should be focused first and foremost? in this draft class, given what we've talked about with the strength of the offensive defensive line. And really, I mean, it seems every year we have conversations around these wide receivers and just how important they are and how big a difference they can make in today's game. Mechie is one who I would be shocked to see him sitting there if the Titans are to stand pat at 26 right now. I mean, this is somebody who's played with some really, I mean, truly great wide receivers at Alabama. Coming out as a junior, he's 6 foot, 195. We'll obviously have official measurements, official combine measurements later on. But if you can put him in a system just to get him in space with the ball in his hands, I mean, you could say that about so many of these hugely talented wide receivers who are coming out of or coming through the draft process basically in the last 5 years, with the way that you've seen the evolution of the position and how much more refined that skill set has gotten. If you can get somebody like John Mechie into an offense that incorporates screens and vertical shots, which one of those things the Titans do with regularity. Vertical shots are also a part of the offense, but less frequent just because of the lack of ability to basically create separation right now, right? You've got some players who can do it. You've got veterans. You've got players big, strong, fast. A.J. Julio when he's right. Obviously, you can make plays and go above and beyond. But I think that when you're talking about a lot of these guys, this is going to be a circumstance where you see the Titans exploring the skill position players a lot. I think we're going to have our buddy Mark Schofield of USA Today sit down and hang out with us here at the Radio Row setup. It's quarterback day. You know, if it's quarterback day, we got to have our guy Mark Schofield on. We'll get Kirby back to his job, and we'll get Mark set up with us here on 104.5 The Zone. Mark, one of the best in the business, joining us now here on the show, and Kirby's going to get him queued up so we can chat it up with Mark Schofield, who's are you just here for the day?
No, man, I'm here.
You're here
Friday.
for the long haul?
I'm here for the long haul. Obviously, today, quarterback day, is the big reason I'm here, but I'm excited to see other positions as well because, in part, as we all have been discussing over the past couple of weeks, building up to the Combine, if you're a quarterback-specific person or a team that perhaps is in the quarterback market, this might not be the best or most exciting of drafts for you.
So how are you? Because this is your bag, right? Quarterbacks are your bag. You're going to scout continually throughout the course of this process. And by the way, you can follow Mark at Mark Schofield. Read his work at the NFL Wire, of course. He's doing content all over the place. You can catch the podcast, Pat's Pulpit, BGN Radio. And he's doing great work on his YouTube channel as well. Just search Mark Schofield and the content will pop up. So how do you you and I were talking about this as we were walking in, and this just seems to be the general conversation around this whole thing in its entirety is, who do you talk yourself into as quarterback one?
I think you have to take it from the perspective of where you are as an organization, what are your needs, and how quickly can you win in this National Football League, or are you a couple of years away? Because I think that is going to go a long way towards who you might view as QB1 on your board. If you're a team that thinks you're just a quarterback or two away or one or two pieces away, you might look at a guy like a Kenny Pickett who is experienced, who can work through NFL concepts, who has shown an ability to develop over his time at Pittsburgh. You might look at a Desmond Ridder, who I also think has it from a mental perspective, his ability to work full field progression reads, get to that backside dig, which has been a huge theme this year.
That's a Titans fan thirst trap, by the way, Desmond Ridder. As soon as he said Ryan Tannehill at the Combine, there's one of the quarterbacks that he looks to take stuff from his game.
Right.
My mentions went crazy.
So if you're a team that believes you're a quarterback away, you want somebody to play right away, you're going to probably look at one of those guys. I think if you're a team like, say, the Detroit Lions that obviously has a lot of holes to fill, you might look at the promise of a Malik Willis and say, we can get him to where he can be. He has a tremendous ceiling. He has an NFL arm. He can make throws to all areas of the field with velocity, with accuracy, with placement. He has the athleticism, I think, that the league is trending towards at the position, the ability to extend, not just extend plays, but to create with his legs. And so if you're a team that has a little bit of a glide path that feels like you have an opportunity to take a shot on the upside because you're a couple of years away and you're still building around a player, Malik Willis might be the guy that you would look to and say, yeah, that's our QB1. Because let's face it, Buck, this is a copycat league. Teams are going to look at what Josh Allen did and how the Bills were able to turn him into a raw sort of prospect that a lot of people, myself included, weren't high on during his draft cycle and say, look what he's become. We can do that with Malik Willis.
It's crazy, but it drives me crazy. It has to make you insane as somebody who studies this position for a living. As soon as the Bengals go on the Super Bowl run, everybody's talking about, oh, Joe Burrow is displaying so many different traits and tendencies that Tom Brady had at his point in his career. The Josh Allen comparisons are wild to me because you were talking about one singular example of a player, either Brady or Allen, for completely different reasons, and the trajectory that they've taken to get to this point in their NFL careers. Why would you waste time trying to put them into a box that I don't think is necessarily replicable, rather than just taking the film on face value?
Right, and that's one of the reasons, Buck, I'm not a huge fan of comparisons, even though we hear them entirely throughout the draft cycle. Who does this player compare to? Every player is different. Every quarterback is different. Like, Josh Allen is perhaps one of a kind. Joe Burrow is perhaps one of a kind. The idea that you're going to have a quarterback like Malik Willis and be able to do with him that the Bills were able to do with Josh Allen. Josh Allen did a lot of the work on his own with Jordan Palmer in the offseason. Like, you have to be able to understand and believe that, sure, if you're going to draft a player that needs that development, he's going to put in that same kind of work. And so this idea that, Joe Burrow, he moves well in the pocket, he's accurate, he's, got the mental standpoint, he's the next Tom Brady. Well, we can slow down on that a little bit. Like, Tom Brady is also perhaps one of a kind. He's also somebody that we might not see again. Joe Burrow, certainly a talented quarterback, got to a Super Bowl in his second year. We hope to see him get back there at some point. But the Tom Brady comparisons or the Malik Willis and Josh Allen comparisons, we need to slow down on that a little bit, I think.
Mark Schofield of Touchdown Wires here with us on 104.5 The Zone, talking quarterback prospects, given the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends have all met with the media today. Somebody like Carson Strong or Bailey Zappi, these guys who are maybe lesser known to the general NFL fan who's getting ready for the draft process, but understands, okay, my team may need some kind of succession plan at quarterback. There's some developmental guys who you look at and you may drool a little bit over the physical abilities and the arm talent and things like that. But then, like, going through Senior Bowl, Mark, I went to my first one this year. I missed you and kissed
years ago.
wandering around at Vietz.
Yep.
Downtown Mobile, Alabama, where all the movers and shakers are. But, you try to grade on a curve, or at least talking to people smarter than I about what you see from these guys at the Senior Bowl, quarterback specifically. Because first day, new wide receivers, new coaches around you, different environment. You're outside more than anything. On the second day, you've got sideways rain, so you're trying to figure out, okay, how much of it is the quarterback struggles or how much of it is just like, this is a difficult thing that we're asking them to do. This is a much more sanitized environment. If I ask you which quarterback you're looking to see the most from as far as ball placement and accuracy, basically, throughout the course of this process this week, who is the one name that comes to mind?
Yeah, Buck, I think it's Carson Strong. And the reason why I think that is when you watch Carson Strong on film, at least when I studied him in his game at Nevada, he certainly seemed like he could make every single NFL throw. It seemed on film that he had perhaps one of the best arms in this class. It seemed like he had the ability, provided the knee checked out, which we can talk about in a second, to maybe be QB2, QB1 on some boards. And then, from seeing the film on him down in Mobile during the Senior Bowl, the arm wasn't quite as advertised. Now, I think there were some reasons for that. And he just got done talking to the media, and he talked about how he has this lingering knee injury. His doctors told him, look, you should probably sit out this season, give yourself a year to recover. And
Really?
He said, no, let's put together a 6-month plan because I want to play one more year, and he said that, look, now I'm working with Jordan Palmer and we're realizing that there was some compensation going on in my throwing motion. There were some things I was doing with my lower body, my base, because of that knee injury that now I have to learn to really drive off that right leg. And so I think if we see now that he's sort of been cleared and he said, look, the doctors have cleared me, I'm ready to go. If we see a really good, crisp throw-in session from him with velocity, that's going to ease some of the fears that I had after that Senior Bowl week, where I do think that, whether it was the elements or relearning his lower body mechanics because of that compensation issue, you didn't see as much velocity. Some of his throws tended to hang a little bit. If we see that more velocity and that ability to dial up the RPMs, to hit those deep out routes and things like that, Strawn is certainly a name to watch as we come out of the combine.
The quarterback position is always a fascination. This year, just generally less so, right? I mean, you talk about just star power from draft classes, and you seem to lack that, like, top-end star power. But I think people lose sight of the fact that the draft process is so much more about what you do days 2 and 3 to build the core of your roster to continue to sustain whatever kind of success you're having or whatever you're trying to build towards. Where do you how many first-round quarterbacks? I don't know if you finished your first-round evaluations. I love talking to people like John Ledyard about this because it's like I got like 10 first-round grades that I give. People look at him like, there's 32 picks. Yeah, I got 10 first-round grades.
10 first-round grades. And you might have maybe 1 or 2 first-round grades from this quarterback group. And, I think what's interesting, Buck, is whenever you have that first quarterback come off the board, whether it's, say, hypothetically, Carolina at 6 or Washington at 11, that might be player 25, 26, 27 on their big board overall, but we all know the value of the quarterback position where you're probably going to have to reach a little bit earlier than you might want to, or at least have ranked on your big board as an organization to get that quarterback that you want out of this class. But it is sort of a more 20s, 30s, 40s in terms of rankings kind of group than, say, last year or the past couple of years. I mean, last year we had 5 go off the board in the top 15. I don't think we're going to see that this year. We might not see the first one come off until the teens. And so it's a different quarterback group, but I do think that there's value in drafting a quarterback, particularly even if you're a team like Tennessee where you don't might not need one right now.
Mark. Don't do it to me.
But at some point,
you're going to light people up.
But at some point, you have an opportunity because, look, we know the importance of this position, and it's always important for teams to have a viable QB2. We know how quickly things can spiral out of control for an organization if you lose that starter and don't have a backup option. So if you have the opportunity as a team to perhaps take a draft pick on a quarterback when you don't need to, it gives you that luxury of that developmental window. And so I think we eventually see maybe 3 or 4 come off the board in the first round, but there might only be 1 or 2 quarterbacks in this draft class that have, quote, first round grades.
Mark Schofield of Touchdown Wire here with us on 104.5 The Zone. By the way, make sure you check out the latest piece that he has up right now with Doug Farrar, the NFL 60 best free agents for the 2022 season. One of them, the Tennessee Titans currently have out from under his contract, Harold Landry. They've got to figure out with how you're kind of going through your process this week, Mark, and just basically how teams approach the quarterback position, because you bring up our situation here in Tennessee, and I assume you watched that playoff game from Ryan Tannehill.
I did.
As somebody who studies this, what do I make of him? Because there are things that are limited about them as an offense by play design. There are also things about him specifically that I cannot for the life of me figure out. I don't think it's just as simple as boiling it down to if he's protected, he's going to do well. But what I saw was each interception has a story of its own, but it was borderline meltdown from him in one of the biggest moments that he's had in his career.
Right. I mean, there were certainly some curious decisions, to say the least, in that playoff game. And it does make you wonder, was it a protection problem? Was it a recognition of coverages? Or was it the simple fact that, look, the Cincinnati Bengals did a very good job defensively in the postseason, particularly, that game against Tennessee, the AFC Championship game. They did a lot from a drop 7, drop 8 perspective. They were one of the teams that dropped 7 or 8 into coverage more than anybody else league-wide. And that's interesting, Buck, talking to a lot of the quarterbacks today. They're being asked by teams in their meetings, like, how did you deal? Matt Corral talked about this a lot. How did you deal with drop 8 coverage? Now, teams probably want to hear his answer, but they also want to apply what Mississippi did to their own offenses, because it seems like that might be the next trend. We all know that the passing game is king, right? You want to be able to slow down what teams do from a passer perspective. Now, from Tennessee, obviously it's different. You're worried about Derrick Henry. You're worried about that run game. But when you get into those 3rd and 7 situations, you get into those late game situations where you have to throw the ball, teams are willing to drop 7, drop 8 into coverage to take away those throwing lanes. And so I think that's something to watch with Tannehill. When he starts seeing some of those drop 7, drop 8s, will they make similar mistakes? Will he force similar throws like he did? I think the final interception was one of those plays where he forced one into coverage. Will he be smarter?
To wide receiver 4.
Mark. Right. I mean, that's the question. That's the curious decision making. But I do think that's part of the process because, this week is about information. Nick Caserio, the Texans general manager, said that yesterday. He said this week's about information. It's about information on these prospects, but it's also information about what you'd have to do to improve yourself offensively, defensively, special teams, not just with players, but with schemes and personnel. And I think how teams, including Tennessee and Ryan Tannehill, navigate those drop 7, drop 8 coverages is going to be huge in the season ahead.
You sticking around for Vrabel's podium today?
I absolutely am, because we know it's must-see television, my friend.
Just to see
if he picks on you or somebody else.
Which one of us he publicly assassinates.
Right,
today.
exactly.
It's been some time since we've seen Mike at the podium. Mark Schofield, make sure you read him. It will make you smarter about this draft process, specifically the quarterback position, but Mark does it all. Buddy, it's always good to see you. It makes me happy to be back at this event, to be around our friends, and to be talking shop once again.
I love it, buddy. Thanks so much for having me, my friend.
When we come back, we're going to get into what happened last night in local college basketball. Vandy with a heartbreaker, and the Vols keeping their win streak alive. That's next. You're having a fantastic Wednesday, getting you through your hump day festivities. A little bit of draft conversation. Mark Schofield was great. It's not the only one of our friends we're going to have come through at the table here in Indianapolis. All of our interviews, by the way, including Titans general manager John Robinson, who's going to join us in about 45 minutes from now, presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Food, booze, live music, sports, what more could you ask for? Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Kirby Allen, Kirby, and myself, we both recommend the Hiroshima hot chicken, as does Lucas Panzica, who actually ate the thing without, breaking much of a stride. It's it's probably the most impressed I've ever been with you, including your professional career.
I don't know if I should be offended by that.
You probably should. You want to talk some hoops?
Yes, let's do that.
So for all the stink we made about college basketball yesterday, right? This is March. Finally, we got the Rothstein tweet. We can ride with it. What happened yesterday in college basketball? And I to be honest, I didn't see all of the games, and I know that things got a little haywire across the sport, but Tennessee being able to handle business against Georgia last night was the thing that they absolutely had to do to be able to continue to keep this conversation alive. Lucas, we've talked about them, basically having a very, very small percentage chance to edge Auburn out for the SEC regular season title. I still think it's going to take a bit of a miracle with only one game left to play, but what they're doing right now is enough to give you hope. 75-68 was the score on the road for the Vols last night. They now improved to 13-4 in the SEC. You got to feel pretty good about where things are heading. They're a half game back of Auburn right now, out of the lead for the SEC regular season title. They are tied with the second best conference record with Kentucky. And the only reason that is because they have all three played, Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee, all three played 13 games. Kentucky and Tennessee, though, have one more loss on their record. Auburn is currently 13-3. Auburn's got Mississippi State. That's tonight, right?
Yeah, that's tonight at 8 o'clock Central tip.
And Mississippi State is quality is probably the wrong word for it, but they are competent. They are good enough to cause you problems in this conference that, is as much of a as difficult a thing to kind of wade your way through as any in the country right now. They're one of these teams that we've talked about to get into the postseason kind of on the bubble, but Florida doing them a massive service last night by just breaking Vanderbilt's heart again. Lucas, I didn't have the chance to see this game in its entirety. I was keeping track of it on social media as I was pulled over in Louisville, Kentucky, trying to figure out what the hell happened to my car on the way up here. But how do you even describe – this is the same game we've seen from them a million different times where Scottie Pippen Jr. has a fantastic night. They get down to the wire, and it just comes down to a few mental mistakes at the end, and all of a sudden they're under 500 after having such a clear and obvious path to postseason basketball for the first time in Jerry Stackhouse's career here.
Yeah, deja vu for Vanderbilt. They were up 7, I believe, with 11 minutes to go. They had multiple possession leads, several points throughout the second half. Like you said, another electric 29-point performance from Scottie Pippen Jr., and then they just come up short. They just can't make the plays down the stretch in the final 2 minutes at home on senior night, too. Stackhouse just sounded exasperated after the game. It's really, they've made strides this year, but man, to lose in that fashion over and over and over again, it's been tough to watch at times. And Tennessee didn't have, they didn't coast last night either. It was very much a survive and advance type of game for Tennessee because they did not play well. They were very sloppy, and Josiah Jordan-James having a career night is really what lifted them out of Athens to get that win. So that's what maybe gives you some hope if you're a Vols fan for Auburn tonight. Mississippi State's been really good at home. Iverson Molinar is one of the better guards in the conference, and Auburn's had its struggles on the road this season. They're not going to lose to South Carolina at home on Saturday. They're unbeaten in Auburn, so this is the shot tonight at Mississippi State. Tennessee fans should all have their eyes on that game. But, yeah, tough for Vanderbilt, man, just tough. They got Ole Miss on Saturday to try to get back to 500. Then there's going to be just an absolute scrap for them to get to above the 500 mark in the SEC tournament, try to get an NIT bid.
See, now it probably sounds like a ridiculous thing for me to say, but I almost would rather see Tennessee win a game like they did last night at Georgia, where you're having to gut it out and it comes down to the wire and you're waiting for somebody to give you kind of the contribution that you need to basically finish this thing in a place that, as we discussed yesterday, hasn't been easy for the Vols to win. Georgia's low-key kind of owned them in Georgia or at Georgia throughout the course of the Rick Barnes era. Owned is probably a strong word, but they have been less competitive against Georgia teams than you would expect a program like Tennessee to be. So I would almost rather see them win a kind of game like that where you're not getting your best performances from your top players, but Josiah Jordan-James, who is absolutely capable, stepping up in that moment, taking advantage of the opportunities, because what we've talked about basically since Olivier Nkamhoua went down is who's gonna do the most with those minutes. I think it's 21 and a half minutes Olivier Nkamhoua was playing in that lineup. Who's going to get those minutes and who's going to take advantage of those opportunities that present themselves. So I was happy to see Tennessee win. I know it's not a pleasant experience if you're a Vol fan, but like just as far as like projecting to what this thing is going to look like in the tournament when you're playing all neutral court environments or as close to neutral court as humanly possible, depending on where they end up landing in the bracket once those are officially released as we get closer and closer to the tournament time, March Madness tournament time. I was really pleased to see Tennessee finish that way, even if the game itself was a bit of a slog. No?
Yeah, that's what the tournament is, right? You just got to battle through those games where you're playing a team that are very outmatched by you, but still find struggles. That's what the NCAA tournament is. Georgia now is obviously not an NCAA tournament team, not even remotely close. They're a 6-win team this season. They're dreadful, and we're about to find out if Georgia gives a damn about basketball, on whether or not they fire Tom Crean this season. But yeah, you got to win those games. I wonder if that loss will be healthy for Tennessee to kind of scrap one out on the road against a lesser opponent before turning around and hosting a red, scorching hot Arkansas team at home on senior night, trying to stay unbeaten on the regular season at home.
All right, I don't fire people a lot, like just on principle in sports, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think we tend to do that, right? As a show, like there are plenty of, sports talk radio, it's easy to fire the coach or fire the GM or fire whomever. I don't call for people's jobs often. I'm trying to decide because I don't use the word petty is overused entirely by J. Martin Ramon on this station. So I try to avoid it when best I can, but I don't know whether it's pettiness that wants me. I don't know what would cause Tom Crean more professional angst, for him to keep the Georgia job or for him to be fired. I can't decide what personal vendetta I would like to see play out more. What would cause Tom Crean more discomfort in that job?
I don't think you need to lean on pettiness being the reason you want Tom Crean fired. Maybe just lean on the 6-24 record and one win in SEC play.
No, I'm just saying, you're asking me if Georgia cares about basketball. I'm saying, maybe I don't care if Georgia cares about basketball.
Sure.
Maybe they just keep him there, and maybe he wins 6 games every year, and maybe that makes me happy. I don't know.
In my opinion, there's 2 SEC teams this year that we're going to learn how committed they are to having a successful basketball program. That's Georgia and Missouri, because you talk about apathy with those 2 fan bases, with what's happening now with Konzo Martin at Mizzou and with Tom Crean at Georgia, the 2 worst environments Tennessee has played in all season, bar none. Missouri was worse than Georgia. I mean, Georgia's a much worse team than the Missouri Tigers, and that environment was pathetic. It was a pathetic SEC basketball environment. Yeah,
it made me sad to watch that game.
Absolutely. 200 fans in attendance, it looked like, and that might be generous. I mean, just truly pitiful for a program that has had success in basketball. They deserve better than what they're getting right now for Konzo Martin. So we're going to learn about if Missouri and Georgia care about committing to basketball like the rest of the SEC has.
Well, the rest of the SEC is absolutely
the Stackhouse audio
to succeeding. In fact, I want people to hear Jerry Stackhouse talking about the game, the way that they lost to Florida last night, because, I mean, he sounded optimistic, when we spoke to him yesterday on the radio show, and then all of a sudden he gets in his post-game press conference after losing another heartbreaker in SEC play and says, "What, Lucas?"
Just, again, every way that we could possibly lose the game. I mean, just feel like we're living in a nightmare right now because, I mean, that game felt like it should have been our game. We did enough. We had enough contributions to win.
I'm going to fade it in a sec.
This wasn't smart enough and didn't execute, down the stretch. Even the long pass, I mean, that's a play that Scotty has. If you catch it in stride, you go in and finish it. If not, it hung up a little bit. He bobbled a little bit. We need to just try to pull that out. They had the foul. we go to the free throw line and force them to foul us. But now it's just, man, we just think we just got a little hurried up, got a little rushed, and again didn't play with the poise that we needed. But
enough. I appreciate Coach Stackhouse's comments, but like the quote is, it feels like we're living in a nightmare. Describe Vanderbilt athletics in one phrase, not name the baseball program. We're living in a nightmare. Tough scene. When we come back, we are going to get into the discussion live here from the Combine in Indianapolis. It's time for, listen, just because we take the show on the road doesn't mean we can't keep the mainstays in place. So what we're going to do next, and we need your help with this, the dumbest thing in sports this week, 615-737-1045. That's how you jump in on the conversation. We're going to tell you what we think was the dumbest thing in sports so far this week. Plenty more dumb things on the horizon, particularly at this event, the Combine. But that's next. Welcome in hour number 2, live from Indianapolis, Indiana. State of my youth, state of my birth, here at the 2022 NFL Scouting Combine. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock, making it happen behind the scenes or back in Nashville is Lucas Panzica. We got Kirby Allen Kirby, we got Will Bowling, we got the whole squad up here, thanks to Scoreboard Bar and Grill, who makes all of our off-season coverage so far possible. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. We'd love to have you. 615-737-1045. That's the number you can dial if you want to jump in on this draft conversation. Now, Titans GM John Robinson going to join us in about, 26 minutes from now, Lucas? My clock is correct, and we will get into a conversation with him about basically what this week is going to look like for him and some different newsworthy items that need to be addressed. But in the meantime, we go from one music to another because, Lucas, I think it's time to do the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
"What the is this?"
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
Something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot.
You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Reising Show.
Sure is. 615-737-1045. That's the number. That's how you tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is. Coach Mack just sat down at our table. I don't know if Mack's got a dumbest thing in sports this week. I'm sure Mack could come up with a few, but he's feeling. I think he's feeling pretty. He's feeling pretty above the dumbest thing in sports right now because he just went and got his ashes on Ash Wednesday. So we're gonna absolve him from criticizing people that way. Lucas, what are you making faces for? What happened back there?
Oh, it's Ash Wednesday.
What do you mean?
Oh, I'm a terrible Catholic.
It is Ash Wednesday. That is correct. I don't think that makes you a terrible Catholic because me bringing up the fact that Coach Mack is sitting in front of me with ashes on his forehead. I don't know that necessarily makes you a terrible Catholic, although we are both Catholic on this show, and perhaps we are ashless at this point. I will scramble to the nearest Catholic church as soon as we get out of here, or Mac will have me, struck down from the heavens. But we, of course, we welcome all religious denominations on the Buck Reising Show, despite our Catholic bent. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Man, this one's tough for me to move off of because this news broke as soon as we started the show today with Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim getting multi-year extensions from the Arizona Cardinals. And, I think Cliff has done some good things. Like, this is not like a scorched earth, like fire everybody type of take, but 5 years with the situation that they currently have, especially the way that they tend to peter out as seasons go along, it may not be a fair assessment because there are so many different things that go into an NFL season. But, like, Cliff Kingsbury is 24-24 in 3 years as an NFL head coach. He's straight up 500. I don't know that is worthy of a 5-year contract extension. I know that Kyler Murray has been capable of doing some great things, but a lot of times when you watch Arizona, I feel like there's so much more potential there that you could further unlock. I'm not saying that Cliff is the worst coach ever, but I think a 5-year extension under these circumstances, that just, to me, makes absolutely no sense. I really think that might be the dumbest thing in sports this week. Lucas, your thought? Oh, he's on the phone. 615-737-1045. My bad. 615-737-1045 if you want to jump in on the dumbest thing in sports this week. Listen, like what Arizona is trying to build and what their plan is beyond my comprehension, right? I don't cover that team. I'm not based there locally. There may be different circumstances that they think the fact that they went from 8-8 in the way that they kind of petered out at the end of the 2020 season to 11-6 this year. But still, I mean, the Cardinals lost, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their last 7 games, and one of those, of course, was a playoff game to the eventual Super Bowl champions in which they just didn't look competent. They looked wildly out of their depth when you watch that playoff game in the wild card round, the first team that the Rams had to advance by to get to ultimately end up winning the Super Bowl. But yeah, after starting, they were the last undefeated team in the NFL, 7-0. So they lose to the Packers, they beat the Niners, they lose to the Panthers, and then things really start to spiral, where you're seeing losses to the Detroit Lions, to the Colts, and to the Seattle Seahawks, who were no kind of competent this year. I really think that extension might be the dumbest thing in sports this week.
My dumbest thing in sports this week is Major League Baseball and the MLBPA not being able to come to an agreement for a new CBA, and the first two series of the regular season in baseball have been canceled. That is 91 games. There are currently no plans to reconvene and negotiate for a new CBA, according to Commissioner Rob Manfred. I think this was spelled out pretty nicely by Mike Giannitti of SpotTrack. From 2015 to 2019, MLB revenue jumped from $8.2 billion to $10.7 billion, a 30% increase. In that same time span, the average player salary decreased from $4.45 million to $4.17 million, while the median fell from $1.6 million to $1.5 million. So you've got two line graphs here with the franchises in Major League Baseball going up in revenue and player salaries in Major League Baseball going down in revenue. And then Rob Manfred gets in front of a microphone yesterday and has the audacity to say that the league has suffered greatly financially since the COVID pandemic, when this has been a trend since long before the COVID pandemic. The disparity between these two sides is astounding. I mean, I have never seen negotiations like this where one side is all the way over here and the other side is all the way over here, and they are not on the same page about literally anything. I don't see how this gets resolved. I have no idea. Now, I feel for my baseball friends. I feel for my roommate who is a diehard Cubs fan who is devastated he can't see his team play on March 31st. For me, I look up in May, and if I didn't know this was happening, I'd say, oh, wait, where's baseball? What's going on? But a lot of people are very tuned into this, and the fact that they can't even come close to an agreement and have put things off and kicked the can and have gotten to this point is insanity. And Rob Manfred's chuckling and giggling with reporters at the press conference.
Laughing at the podium before he got up there.
Absolute dumpster fire. I've never seen anything like this.
This commissioner, this Rob Manfred, this man who referred to the World Series trophy as a hunk of metal and who is giggling as he approaches the press conference to tell the baseball-consuming world what little of it remains that you're not getting opening day baseball, not only taking a pee on your prospective fans who you have this window without football, right? You've just let things like the NFL Combine, things like the thing that we call the Underwear Olympics and March Madness completely take any momentum that you could have had after the football season and flush it, right, with new prospective fans. Now, if you're asking, like Lucas and I have talked about this before, I mean, you can't see Kirby and Will because they're off camera, but you got rounds of maybe golf clap, maybe not a full round of applause, but a slight golf clap. Kirby, your thoughts?
Just totally reaffirms my decision after the 1994 thing, which I have done away with everything baseball. And haven't missed it a bit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are plenty of people who are already turned off because of previous labor strikes. There are people who may have been, especially like locally, like in markets around Atlanta, that you have the potential to grow the Atlanta Braves fan base coming off a World Series win. You could have gotten my attention for a hot second after the Super Bowl was over, and then things advance and nothing gets done, and you've had a year to prepare for this, and you've got Rob Manfred snickering like a child at the podium getting ready to tell baseball fans, not just the ones that you could have had, but the ones that you still have, inexplicably to me, that you're not getting baseball on opening day. Sorry, we'll try again in 9 days.
Atlanta Braves, the last World Series champions ever?
Yes.
Question mark?
Yeah.
And by the I can attest to Kirby Allen Kirby the fact that he has not paid it. He has boycotted baseball since 1994. He has told me that many times. Wonder how many fans will hop in that boat. This is from Ryan Lewis. Just the last thing on this. Covers the Cleveland Guardians for USA Today Sports, not the roller derby team, formerly known as the Cleveland Indians.
That's right. I forgot they changed. See them baseball. Hell out of here.
Ryan Lewis spells this out. MLB imposes lockout. MLB waits 40-plus days to make first offer. MLB sets up arbitrary deadline to save opening day. MLB gives impression a deal is close, raising hopes, delaying the deadline. MLB says MLBPA tone has changed, tries to put all the onus on players via public perception to save opening day.
It's so bad. I had completely forgot about it. We didn't have Dan Lust on to talk about the fact that the Cleveland Guardians changed their name and then were basically had a copyright infringement suit against them from a roller derby team that was also the Cleveland Guardians because they just didn't do their homework. Completely and totally asinine. That's the dumbest thing in sports this week. 615-737-1045. If you got one, let us hear it. Let's go to Kyle in Nashville with the dumbest thing in sports this week. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great, buddy. What you got for me?
Hey, dumbest thing in sports, kind of throwing it back to the Cardinals. Kyler Murray throwing a fit and wanting a long-term contract. I mean, he's not even been in here in the league that long. You've got 2 Pro Bowls. But like you said, at the end of the season or towards the end of the season, they fizzled out. Also, I think it was kind of a terrible time to try to get this contract, considering he can't dangle the fact that he has been drafted in the Major League Baseball. So he can't be like, oh, well, I'm about to leave. So he can't use that as leverage. To me, that's my dumbest thing in sports.
I appreciate the call, Kyle. 615-737-1045 is how you nominate. Do you think we should play the dumbest thing in sports with John Robinson? Do you think he's got one? Do you think he's ready to take somebody out publicly?
I don't know if he does, but you should ask.
We will do that. Coming up next. Welcome back. Live from the Combine here in Indianapolis. Presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. Kirby likes the music, Lucas. Crank this up for me. One time.
Yeah, I'm into this.
We need our souls to be saved. We forgot our ashes on Ash Wednesday.
Gotta get this on A-Track.
Coach Mack is in here Catholic shaming us, so we had to save our soul with a little music here on the show. John Robinson going to sit down with us here in about 5 minutes. We'll wrap things up with the dumbest thing in sports this week. I know we got a few calls left to go. How about RJ in Phoenix? What you got for me, RJ?
What's going on? Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Drive-by alert, man. Besides Darrington, man, you know he dumb. Besides Darrington being dumb, the dumbest thing in sports is going to be the college basketball flop rule.
Oh.
It stops the flow of the game. So it's super dumb. So the first time you get a delay of game if you flop. The second time is a technical foul, one free throw.
Yeah.
Most of the flops coming in the paint with that charge blocking call. You know, was it a charge, was it a block? You don't call the charge. You let the guy lay there with a pair of dingleberries in his face and get dunked on. We don't need a rule.
There are so many things. Thank you for the call, RJ. 615-737-1045. What are you giggling about? What happened?
RJ just saved college basketball.
I'm telling you. Listen, there are so many things wrong with the sport of basketball, which drives me insane because it's my favorite by a mile as far as what I like to watch. But what they have done to the final 2 minutes of every basketball game and how much the flow gets bogged down, not just in college but in the pros as well, with the rules and the way that the games are officiated, it drives me insane, utterly insane.
We did not talk about Vescovi getting put on an absolute poster last night in Athens.
All right, you got 5 minutes to do that before we have to pivot hardcore to Combine talk again. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, that was nasty. I mean, that was disgusting. And he started hot, too, was 2 for 2 from beyond the arc. And that looked like it physically affected Santiago Vescovi.
How could it not? How could it not?
He looked like damaged after that happened for a while, like he was still recovering. Last year, do you remember Keon Johnson's dunk against the Georgia Bulldogs last year?
Yes.
One of the best dunks I've ever seen in a Tennessee uniform, where he just, like, it wasn't even like launching from the free throw line. He just levitated from the block and threw down just a hammer. Well, Georgia returned the favor to Tennessee last night. Just had to give that a shout out.
It was an interesting thing to watch. Not quite the show. Well, nobody wants to end up on SportsCenter, right? As the guy who got just yammed on, right? Like Jakob Poeltl after the Grizzlies game, he probably wants nothing to do with television the next day or the internet because he knows that every time he turns on SportsCenter or any highlight show, he is going to be the top featured thing as somebody who's got Ja Morant in his face, flying through the air as somebody who is 6'2" on a 7-footer. That's what makes the Ja stuff even crazier because he just gets up and flies through the air. But yeah, what happened to Santiago Vescovi last night was less than ideal for him. But fortunately, I don't think the highlight shows are going to be clipping too much from Georgia, Tennessee, with one game left to go in the SEC regular season. Getting back to the Combine stuff, obviously that's where we are broadcasting from today. John Robinson will sit down with us here in just a second. Basically, the kind of trajectory I want to take this down with John is it's not like a trend, right? Like it's two specific examples that everybody seems to gravitate towards. Jeffrey Simmons falling to 19 because of the ACL, and Caleb Farley's situation, seeing him drop last year through the draft process that made a hugely talented player available to the Titans. One has panned out, one is TBD, right? We have no idea what the Caleb Farley experience is going to hold, and each year in the draft process is different. But why that is so important at this time of year specifically is because of the only reason that the Combine still exists. This is an antiquated event, right? You can do the 40-yard dash. You can have quarterbacks throw to wide receivers that they're more comfortable with at pro days all across the country on college campuses. The reason that this thing is still a thing at all and that agents and players still tolerate it is because this is the most conclusive medical diagnostic process that we will have before you get ready to hand over hundreds of millions of dollars to 20, 21, and 22-year-old athletes, you want to make sure somebody's knee works the way that you expect it to work, or that the rehabilitation process coming off an ACL is going according to plan. So many different examples of guys just basically being poked and prodded that matters for a team like this one that has from time to time, not exclusively, but has from time to time explored the idea that we are going to take a player who may not be immediately available in the draft, but whose talent will help our football team ultimately. It's a different spin on best player available, which for most people is the common approach to the first round in the NFL draft, right? You take each pick and basically each round on a round-by-round basis, and you do your cost-benefit analysis. And the way that draft boards are broken down, there seems to be a lot of disparity between talent evaluators' opinions all across the board. We've talked a lot about quarterbacks and specifically, given how different that circumstance is from years past in this combine, but really variance all over the board. And I'm curious to talk to John basically about their circumstance in the first round, with their lack of a second-round pick this year, and basically how things are going to maneuver about for the Tennessee Titans throughout the course of this draft process. I can see JR walking up here in just a second, so he'll sit down with us momentarily, and we'll be able to ask the GM all of these different questions. For me, though, I'm really interested to see how things are prioritized. Obviously, Mike Vrabel is going to meet with the media today as well. John's going to sit down with us before he does his press conference availability, and he's joining us right now as soon as Kirby Allen Kirby gets him the hookup. Nah, he's a pro. He's been here before. What's happening?
Afternoon. How are we?
We're doing okay.
Can you guys hear me?
We sure can. Can you hear you?
No, not. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Now we're hot.
John Robinson.
We're hot.
Here with us on 104.5 The Zone. It's great to be back at the Combine, John. This is the first time that the media vultures have been able to be back at this kind of thing. But how much different have the last 2 years been through the evaluation process for you now that we're starting to get things back to kind of normal?
Very different. And I would say this, a sense of normalcy has certainly returned. Being able to interact with the prospects through a couple different interview sessions, it's so much better than trying to talk to somebody over a computer. You can watch film. You can ask them tough questions as you're watching the film, like, well, what were you doing here? And, because that's what we're trying to hire them to do, is to be football players. And
right.
You're getting to know them as people along the way throughout the course of conversation, but it's just, it's hard in that virtual world to read body language, to look at, are they looking down at the ground all the time when you're asking them tough questions? All of those little things that, they could be precursors to what the player may be about, but they've been good. We've had some really good interviews the last couple of days, and look forward to keep plowing away here.
Titans General Manager John Robinson here with us at the Combine on 104.5 The Zone. When you're breaking, and I know it's on an individual prospect basis when you're watching film with these guys and when you're asking them about certain plays or certain concepts, maybe your quarterback, how they read a defense or how they handle like drop eight or something like that, for example. When you're going through that process with them, how many –
Drop eight? You've been playing Madden?
No, we had people a lot smarter than me on here talking X's and O's. I try to sound smart about football every once in a while, John. I make you laugh with that one?
That was good, yeah. Almost as good as a player the other night. We were asking, like, what kind of coverage do you see mostly? He goes, we see that bump and run. And I'm like, I heard bump and run in like 12 years.
But, like, how does that – how many people – just for the audience who doesn't necessarily know how this thing works for you, how many people are in the room with you guys, with the prospects when you're going through these things?
Yeah, probably 10, 10 or 11. Scouts are in there. Obviously, Coach Vrabel, usually coordinators are in there. And it's, there's really, we've got a format that we try to follow, but there's, some off schedule. Sometimes the player will say something and it'll spark a question, maybe in Vrabel's mind or in my mind. And, sometimes you'll throw them a little high heat and try to brush them back off the plate, see how they react to that. And, sometimes you'll throw them a softball and see if, do they swing and hit it or do they miss. But it's we've got a job for basically everybody in the room. You're observing body language. Our area scouts and our guys that have been on the road, they know the background of these players from what their contacts at their various schools. As you kind of talk through some of those things, you're seeing, all right, well, are they really being pretty forthcoming on some of that stuff, or are they trying to skirt around it? And I'd say for the most part, the guys we've talked to so far have been really good.
A consensus about this draft class, a lot of talent in the offensive and defensive line, the trenches specifically, but it seems like there's so much variance around the quarterback position. When there are years like that, I know the priority is good football players who are going to do everything they can to help the football team first and foremost, but when you're kind of looking at a draft like this where those positions are at a premium and given the protection was something of an issue last year, what do you kind of make of this offensive line class?
I think it's a pretty good class. Yeah, I think that there's some good players on the end of the line of scrimmage. Some good players kind of close to the interior of the point. Centers and guards. I think that's a good group. I think as a whole, it's a good group. I think you can find players really at different levels, but all players that I think can line up and play. Certainly guys that go in the top 5 theoretically should be somebody that better than somebody goes in the 4th round. But at the end of the day, who knows? It's all subjective, and it's all really dependent upon how much the player's willing to come in and work to maximize their skill set. But I think investing in the lines of scrimmage is important. I think you can never go wrong investing there because, as you said, that's such a premium, and that's really where the foundation of a football game it starts up there. If you don't protect and if you don't attack the other team's line, then it could be a long game for you.
Teams are built outside of just the first round, but obviously that's what a lot of football fans gravitate towards. For you guys, is it a necessity for your first round pick to be able to provide you instant impact, or are you guys in a position as a roster to kind of slow play things a little bit in the cases of somebody like Jeff or Caleb last year?
Yeah, I think those two guys are good examples. I think that when when we selected Jeffrey, there was everybody kind of saw his talent, but there was a little bit of, well, you're not going to get the player, and I think we've certainly seen what he's capable of doing. Congrats to him on making the Pro Bowl this year. And Caleb, he came back off the his injury before the after the combine. Well, it wasn't a combine last year, but and then unfortunately got hurt in a game there in Nissan. So, but he's working hard. I think when you talk about that first round pick, ideally you would love for it to be clean. Sure. You'd love for it to come in and be a premium starter. And you never know in the first round where those guys come from. There's guys picked at the back of the first round that end up being, really, really good. DeAndre Hopkins was the back of the first round guy. And you got guys at the top of the round that don't do so good. So I think when we talk scouting terms, you've certainly got grade-wise guys that we think will come in and be, day one impact players. Those guys typically are gone before we pick because we typically pick at the back of the round.
Not a bad problem to have.
It's not a terrible problem. I'm not complaining. But then you've got guys that you're really looking at year 2. All right, so once this guy comes in, he gets acclimated, this guy can start for us, and we think we can win football games with him.
Like we said, Titans general manager John Robinson here with us. Like we said, the priority is good football players. Is the quarterback position off the table this year, or is no position off the table?
No, I think we're always looking to add players to the team that we think, either from a developmental role can help the football team, from a depth role can help the football team. Logan's certainly done. He's improved. Ryan's has made a bunch of great throws for us. He's played a lot of good football for us. Unfortunately, he had a bad game or two last year, and that sticks with you, especially when it's the last game of the year.
Recency bias is tough.
So and he knows he's got to be better, and I know he's going to work his tail off to be better and improve, just like all of our players are. But I think that position, you're always looking at that position because it's such an important position, maybe the most important position of the football team.
Over the course of your career here in Tennessee, now going into year 7, you have always rewarded guys when their second contracts are coming up who have been committed to the cause, who have been durable, and who have been productive, whether it's Lawan or Byard, Derek, Tannehill. Now you've kind of got a similar situation like that with Harold Landry. What's kind of the cost-benefit analysis of a player like Harold when you're looking at where you are financially against player that's at a premium position and who has done just about everything humanly possible to live up to that expectation for you guys.
Yeah, Harold's done a great job. He's a guy that we thought a lot of when we traded up and took him. He's played a couple different spots for us. He's been productive year in and year out. Some years statistically, sack-wise, have been better than others. I certainly he played good for us. I think he benefited from some pieces that we had around him, and I think some of those pieces that we had around him benefited from him. That's football. That's a team. But we're working to try to keep Harold. We've had some discussions. We'll have another meeting this week, and then we'll talk after. And we've got a couple weeks here before the deadline, and when free agency starts. And we love Harold, and we want to try to keep Harold. But that balance of how far can you go is something that we have to be mindful of and we have to work through.
Titans General Manager John Robinson, he's getting ready to meet with the media, but he decided to stop by here first. I thought we were going to outfit coordinate. I brought your jumpsuit.
Was it pink like yours?
Well, no, I went
Tangelo.
I went with it.
Is that a mob?
It said sand on the description. I brought you more a creamsicle colored one, so it's here. I'm going to be here all week.
It was really more like a medium rare salmon. Had old salmon tint.
That's what I asked for. Thanks, John.
Great seeing you guys.
John Robinson, there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Come back here in just a second. I'm Buck Reising, live from the Combine here in Indianapolis.
Live.
Welcome back live from the 2022 NFL Scouting Combine here on 104.5 The Zone. I'm getting all kinds of heat from all different sides. This is not what I come. This is my home. This is supposed to be a homecoming. I went to college in Indiana. Instead, I come here to get buried by my friends like Carmen Vitale, who joins us now from the Draft Network. Carm, congratulations on the new job, by the way.
Well, you can't start being nice when I'm getting ready to
No, it's okay.
Start pulling. I can't pull a punch
I'm
now.
nice to every person over here who was just ripping me for 15 minutes before we came on the air. You can do that too. It's
Well,
okay.
Anytime I have a chance to pile on in person, no less, I'm going to take it. And now I've got a whole army behind me at this point, apparently.
You do. The audience can't see Coach Mack, Coach Dave McGinnis, or hear him, but it's just know he's been chirping at us from the background while he eats snacks and watches this like a source of entertainment. So Carm has been with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the past several years. She's just joined the Draft Network. She's got an entire camera crew hiring her around. I'm thinking about Venmoing Kirby to do the same with me so I look important. But you're here to cover the draft.
I am.
This is your bread and butter. This has been the case for several years.
Yeah, no, this is not my first time with the Combine, but it's my first time kind of, paying attention to every team and to every prospect. It was such a singular focus when I was with the Bucs. And now I kind of the chains they're broken. My worldview has opened up.
Welcome to the dark side.
I know. I'm like, God, I have to consort with humans like you more.
Yeah.
It's just. It's been a wonderful experience, though. I can't say enough about my new coworkers. This is literally my second day on the job, but it's been phenomenal getting to know everybody, and I'm so excited to learn from so many people at this organization now and in this company.
TheDraftNetwork.com is where you go to fill out all of your various mock drafts like a bunch of addicts, because we all know that NFL fans are trying to get their smack this time of year.
Gluttons for punishment.
No,
are
you guys
really
provide.
An NFL fan if you're
No, you guys are like the plug. All right,
we sure are.
You guys are the draft plug. It's unbelievable.
Ooh, I love that. I'm totally the plug.
Well, yeah.
My friend Alex over here's got 2 phones, so one for the plug.
Pop culture references is, I'm sure that's doing well with the FM radio audience. So quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends are speaking today. Let's actually talk some shop, shall we?
All right, let's do it.
Who has impressed you most just based on the in-person interview sessions that we've had so far? Is there a position that you were honed in on, a prospect that you wanted to learn more about? Where's today's direction kind of taken you?
Today's direction took me to quarterbacks, as I think it did most people, because you got, so the top guys speaking today. This is my first, kind of introduction to Matt Corral in person.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed he talked actually a lot about mental health, which was something that I picked up on that I haven't heard from anyone, and how he not only prioritizes it, but embedded it in his leadership philosophy. And I think that's going to serve him well at the next level. And I think that's something that, I don't know, that was something that stuck out to me. I was very impressed by all of it.
Was that unprompted?
It was, for the most part. It was kind of like, what makes you a great leader? What is it that you want to instill, or what can you bring to a team as far as leadership qualities? And he said that, he does it by being vulnerable with his teammates. And, I wanted to ask, and he ended up explaining why he's like that. And he said it's because he's got 2 older brothers that always just told him to toughen up, and that was it.
Well, that's such a different dynamic than I feel like we're used to talking about. Obviously, mental health has been on the forefront of these kind of things, but it's particularly coming out of the circumstance that we've all been in for basically, almost 3 years at this point, where you are having to basically have to learn how to conduct yourself in completely different ways and have to compartmentalize things completely differently. I think we just kind of discount this from professional athletes, but for these college kids who have very much experienced this at one of the most pivotal points in their development
lives.
As humans.
As humans,
not
exactly.
just as future career athletes. That is something that I think you hear a lot more of the discussion, not just from the players themselves, but from the organizations, because they understand what exactly they are taking on and how they need to approach this thing in a way that's completely different from football conversations. When I was in high school 10 years ago.
Right. It's something, and he said that he had weekly Wednesday sessions where all the coaches were out of there, and especially except for the strength coach, he said, and all the players got around, and it was almost like a circle of, hey, this happened to me this week. I wasn't sure how to deal with it. Has anybody else done something like this? Where they all shared and were, again, that he just kept using the word vulnerable, and I think that that's a really great way to earn respect. It's a really mature way to earn respect. So I have to think that, at the next level, that's going to serve him well. That being said, Matt Corral is not throwing. And we haven't seen Matt Corral throw.
He's one of the few.
He's one of the few.
Because he was obviously not eligible for the Senior Bowl for people listening. He's an underclassman.
And in a class like this that is largely touted as underwhelming, you have an opportunity to set yourself apart and to be like, yeah, I am quarterback number one, because theoretically the field of play is just not up to, it's not hard to stand out.
Especially because it seems consensus expectations are low for that position.
The
So
bar
anything
is low,
that you do.
Right, exactly. So why would you not take that opportunity to do so? And this may be me reading way too much into things. Me, an overthinker, imagine that.
Shocking.
Buck knows me entirely too well for me to self-deprecate on this. But after about 15 minutes at the podium, he started the podium, he was standing up, kept standing up for 15 minutes. He sat down after 15 minutes. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
The only thing I think of is, like, you had to sit down. Was your ankle bothering you? Are you maybe not as healthy as you say you are, even though you say you're throwing at 100%, you're pain-free?
You know who else is an overthinker outside of Carmen Vitale? NFL talent evaluators who are going to look at that exact same kind of thing and be like, what's happening there? We just had the Titans general manager on, John Robinson. He's talking about we have 10 people in the room when we're watching film with these guys. Somebody's there to study body language. Somebody's there to see how people react to the different, if we're coming at them with a little bit of a hotter question than they might be prepared for, just to kind of see how they handle these things. I think people underrate just how every element of these guys is studied to an infinitesimal amount, to where you're trying to figure out exactly what these guys are made of and can they handle the rigors of what the next level holds.
Yeah, and it would certainly kind of justify his decision to sit out all of this throwing and all of that if he really isn't healthy. He kept kind of deferring to his pro day and being like, that's where you're going to see me. And listen, pro days are meant for success for their prospects. You're in a comfortable environment. You're around the guys that you're normally around. You're throwing to guys that you're normally throwing to. Yeah. So that's, of course you want to be in that comfortable environment, but I can't get over it. And especially for a guy that didn't sit out his bowl game. Yeah. Didn't even entertain the idea of sitting out his bowl game. Toughed it out through so many other situations just to switch gears and to be so conservative all of a sudden just doesn't sit right with me.
I think it's on top of the fact that him in particular, it seems when you talk to a lot of scouts, people struggle with him in that system because so few of his passes went beyond 5 yards in the way that Lane Kiffin orchestrates his offense. So you know that he's got arm talent, but you don't have a large enough sample size to kind of evaluate and say, okay, he's clearly and obviously better at passes, between 15 and 20 yards down the field than quarterback X, Y, and Z. I think that when people talk about scouting, these are the kind of things that people, of course, like Carmen at the Draft Network, and, of course, the people whose livelihoods depend on this go through the process trying to figure out.
Yeah, God help all of our souls.
Yeah, this is built for sleep deprivation, this whole situation, basically, until we get through Vegas for the draft.
Not only for us, though, these prospects, you're putting them through these rigors of, and I'm still waiting on a good answer as to why the testing isn't done in the beginning of the week when these guys are fresher, because now it's they're in these meetings until 11:30 at night. They're getting up early to do other media sessions and all this other stuff for 4 or 5 days straight. You're not getting a lot of sleep. You're under a lot of pressure. And then all of a sudden, go and have the best workout of your life, for a couple days straight. And, why don't you just push those all in the beginning?
Just get the medical out of the way. Let that be removed, basically, from their minds and let them, like you want them to do on a football field, think less and play and basically practice, drill a little more freely.
Well, in the NFL, think about how much these guys, if you have a short week or, if you're coming off a really long trip, these guys, you go a little bit easier at practice. Yeah. You don't put them through the rigors during, the season, when they're about to go play a game. So why would you do it here? I guess it's, to really weed out only the strong survive around here. But I know. And additionally with that, I got to talk to Malik Willis a little bit.
Yes.
And I took more from what he didn't say.
Okay.
Than what he said.
Explain.
He was asked about his preparation. He was asked if he had gotten on the board with, what these teams were asking him to draw, all that other stuff. He's like, yeah, and then, but the second part of this question was, and, what's your preparation like as far as film study goes? What are you doing to get better in that to prepare you for the NFL game now? Well, and he goes, oh, yeah, teams have been asking me to get on the board. I draw, some of their plays. I draw some of our plays. Really negated to address anything film study related. And then goes on to say, and this is, again, me, an overthinker, goes on to say that he wasn't even into football for the longest time because he found it boring.
Oh, no, not yet. We just got here. No, you can't do that.
Why can't I do that?
No, he can't do
he
that.
can't
That's
do
what
that.
I'm saying.
I'm like, wait, what are we?
Not
Sorry,
now.
No,
Not,
and I'm like,
I'm yelling at you. No, you can't do that.
I can't do that. No, but like you can't do that. Like you literally just said you negated to say anything about the film study.
One of the
when
most critical parts of the evaluation process.
And then now you're saying, actually, I kind of found football boring. And then he was asked what made football become like unboring to you. He goes, when I got good at it.
Oh,
and I'm
God.
like, and like he had like a kind of a bubbly personality, but I kind of took it as a little bit more aloof. I got kind of a defensive vibe from him where he was like, people are going to talk their stuff and you got to block out the noise. But at the same time, I'm like, you sound awfully defensive for someone who blocks out the noise. I don't know. I wasn't left like super overwhelmed with, confidence.
That's a pretty damning indictment of one of the guys who's being discussed as potentially a first-round prospect at quarterback. Carmen Vitale, make sure you follow her on social media. Make sure you're checking out the Draft Network for all of your mock draft needs, all of your insights, analysis, scouting. It's great. It makes people like me sound smart this time of year. That's why we like to have Carmen on to basically carry me for a segment. A pleasure as always. You and your entourage.
Stop it.
We appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me, Bud.
When we come back, final hour here in Indianapolis. That's next. Final hour. I don't know where the time went, but we're enjoying ourselves here in Indianapolis. Welcome in or welcome back if you've been kicking it with us so far this morning. We're happy to have you in. Lucas Banzica is making it happen behind the scenes. We got Will Bowling out here. Allen Kirby, I think, is on a cigarette break, so I'm sure he'll find his way back to the table eventually. He told me, Lucas, he was going to put his cigarette ash out on my forehead to accommodate our Ash Wednesday requirements. Seeing as you and I, wayward Catholics that we are, have forgotten this on the most holy of days. Coach Mack has a priest coming into the combine to give him the ashes, so we are not at that status quite yet, but we will see. If you want to jump in on the conversation, we'd love to have you. 615-737-1045. The show has been great so far today. A lot of great and interesting guests providing unique insights on basically how everybody scouts differently and how the approach changes throughout the course of the process. And by the way, the guest list is going to continue to grow over the course of the next couple of days. I'm looking forward to getting into just basically to have people to talk shop with to have you guys in on our conversations the way that we talk about football, because all of the media and on top of all of the executives and all of the front office people, all of the coaches, they are here for one reason and one reason alone, and that is the scouting combine. We're always, by the way, this coverage this week presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. All of our great interviews, food, booze, live music, and sports for all of your needs and for a great time with great people. Scoreboard Bar and Grill in Music Valley is your spot. So before we get into, because we had John on, right, and we had the conversation about, is a quarterback off the table this year? Given the commitment to Ryan Tannehill, he's currently meeting with the media right now at this point, and is just wrapping up, it would seem. John Robinson has been commenting on things like the new stadium, and Dylan Radins, an interesting quote on Dylan Radins, the former second-round pick, last year's second-round pick. We've worked Dylan Radins at guard and tackle. His future position is to be determined, but most of his experience is at tackle. So as they try to figure out their 2-year developmental second-round pick prospect, something to keep an eye on, and how that impacts basically their draft, right? You've invested high round draft picks, early round draft picks in the tackle position, both Radins and Isaiah Wilson before him. How much of Dylan Radins' progress is very much going to impact how they're able to handle this upcoming draft and the goal of Ryan Tannehill's improved protection. But the biggest thing this week in particular, at least early on this week, right? We've got many more days of this to go, but at least 2 more days while we're on the air here. And basically the conversations that are dominating the NFL Combine right now. So much of this conversation is being driven around, is there going to be legitimate quarterback movement before the 2022 season? We have, from everything from Titans fans getting gaslit about Aaron Rodgers buying property in Brentwood and building a home, from Russell Wilson and his unhappiness and the fact that he is the only one of these quarterbacks who has given his agent in previous seasons a list of 4 teams he'd be comfortable being traded to, but all the while he's standing back there and saying, well, I've never officially asked for a trade, but if I was to be traded, here is where I would prefer to go, which I always think is a funny oxymoronic type of situation that these guys don't have to worry about because they don't care. They just care that they get what they want. And how much of this has been changed by just basically player empowerment in a way that we've seen. I mean, I was watching, I don't know why I had a Lakers game on because they're terrible this year with LeBron James, but LeBron James, they're getting skunked. I can't remember who they were losing to, but they were down by like 25. And in LA, LeBron James is being booed. And all I could think while watching that is, one, LeBron James is in a team of entirely his own invention, right? Because they gave LeBron the keys to the kingdom, right? Every franchise basically outside of Miami has said, okay, you're the best player. Basketball is different, but we are going to basically facilitate all the different personnel decisions that you think will put you in the best position to help us win a championship. And you see this now in the NFL, too, where LeBron James has taught a lot of these athletes, even somebody who's of a more advanced age than LeBron, like Tom Brady, who is basically holding several different franchises hostage, all because he is trying to figure out whether he wants to play for the Bucs anymore or not at 44 years old, when you have him on record multiple times with credible sources saying, yeah, I'd like to play till I'm 47, 48. Tom Brady, who is basically orchestrated, who was, allowed to leave the New England Patriots, orchestrated a roster of his own invention, won a Super Bowl in Tampa. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are now in this phase of the conversation where two-star quarterbacks who may not necessarily be thrilled with their current circumstances are trying to dictate to their respective franchises, one more successfully than the other in the case of Rodgers, how things are going to go down, right? You're holding these franchises hostage. And you can do that in basketball more easily than you can do in football. Football is a much larger situation, more players, less valuable, unless you're the star QB. And what has been dominating the conversation around the combine right now is, are these quarterbacks actually going to move this offseason? Rodgers, Wilson, Wentz is another big name, if not major impact player that is going to be, in all likelihood, the most likely of these guys to have a different home next year. You had Chris Ballard yesterday, the GM of the Colts, meeting with the media saying, yeah, at the time we did what was in the best interest of the Indianapolis Colts. And at the time, I stood by that decision. Since then, now we're going to do what's in the best interest of the Colts, which seems to be trending towards the outright release, if not trade, of Carson Wentz. So quarterback conversation, even more than the prospects, because it's going to impact how teams draft. Even more than the prospects, how teams are going to navigate this situation as they try and figure out who the power player, literally power players, are in this offseason and how that is going to materialize in the way that these teams have to build towards in the future. We're going to continue this conversation coming up next and basically play back some of John Robinson's comments on whether drafting a quarterback is off the table. The response may surprise you, and I'm going to tell you why it's important coming up next. Your phone calls as well, live from the Combine here in Indianapolis. Buck Reising with you, presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Welcome back. Here at the Combine, Mike Vrabel going to be at the podium about 25 minutes from now. Lucas, are we carrying that live, or are we just doing the polls? We're going to say bleep Mike Vrabel today.
It's up to you. Do you want to bleep Mike Vrabel, or do you want to bleep the polls?
Well, that's a loaded question. I don't know. Is there congratulatory Coach of the Year cake icing on the line? Because I think then you could get creative with how we decide to make our decision here.
Well, did you pass on your question to anybody about the picture of Vrabel and Compton with the cake?
Indeed, I have. It's incumbent upon my, not that I am upset by any stretch of the imagination that I'm bound by the shackles of Allen Kirby's headset that I have between the hours of 10 and 1 p.m. Central Time, as is the custom. But I have passed along my question about the icing and the finger in the hockey suite the other day. Deeply concerning.
Rob, live producing the radio show.
Okay.
What if we did something crazy here? What if we did the polls at about 12:35?
Whoa.
And then came back with Vrabel.
Now, you are talking about completely upending everything that I know to be so about my radio program, our radio program, to be more specific. Is this an executive producer decision that you are making? You are technically the decision maker on this show. I'm just the idiot who sits here in front of the microphone for 3 hours.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, look at that. We'll carry Mike Vrabel at 12:45. We'll do the polls at 12:35, a little early, so we can make sure you get all of the Titans content humanly possible. Some updates from Indianapolis. Louis Riddick apparently is interviewed for the GM job for the Pittsburgh Steelers, while the collective NFL cognoscenti is here talking amongst each other and trying to figure out who's going to do the next. The whole the Steelers situation is pretty interesting. Have you followed that at all with Kevin Colbert?
Right.
He's leaving the job, but he's still doing their draft.
Yeah, that's such an. I've never seen that before.
Well, because I don't know. I had forgotten about it. I've got one NFL team to keep track of. Sometimes I've only got so much bandwidth. But, you follow things around the league and you talk to different people who cover other teams, you have friends in other markets and things like that. And I saw a couple of my friends who cover the Steelers live tweeting Kevin Colbert's press conference at the Combine yesterday. And I'm like, wait, I thought he had made this big thing about not him and Ben Roethlisberger leaving at the same time, but at the same time that Ben was leaving, the general manager had decided to resign his post. And yet here he is drafting for his successor in ways that have to be very uncomfortable if you're somebody who's interviewing for that job, right? Like, is Riddick walking in there under the auspices that, you're going to be working with somebody else's draft class next year because this is kind of how he wants to do it? What?
Not only someone else's draft class, somebody else's franchise quarterback. I mean, you're handing Mike Tomlin a quarterback, say, here's your future, and then walking out the door.
Yeah. No, that's the biggest part of this, right? Because they will have a new quarterback situation with Ben Roethlisberger retiring. Now you get into a circumstance that is that's going on. Coach Mack has come to the table. He's hanging out here with us. Mack, you're motioning to me while I'm on the air. What's going on? The priest wants to give you ashes. Oh, we're going to do ashes on the air. Now, Father, can I ask you to put on a headset while we do this? Is that possible? I do appreciate that. We will do this as a live. See, Coach Mack has been talking trash all day, and now he's going to bail out the radio show in real time. Father, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Now, this is our first time meeting. Buck Reising.
Father Douglas Hunter.
Douglas Hunter. Pleasure to have you, Father. So we have been, my producer and I, we are both Catholic. Mm-hmm. Coach Mack came over the table. He said, what is wrong with you? Why don't you have your ashes? And I said, we have been negligent in our duties, and we're going to do this right here and right now.
Shame on you. Shame.
Somewhere my grandmother is her prayers have been answered.
Yes, they have.
So I appreciate you coming over to the table. I'm going to lean forward for the people watching this on Zone TV, and we're going to do this in real time. I don't know if it's okay for me to continue talking since we're live on the air.
You can keep talking. Just give me 1 second.
Okay,
here.
If that's going to interrupt the proceedings here.
Just remember, you are dust, and unto dust you shall return.
There it is.
All right,
Ash
done.
Wednesday, responsibilities satisfied. Father, I really appreciate you doing that.
No problem at all. Greatly appreciated.
So now you Coach Mack had the situation where you came to him to make. You were already at the combine though.
I was already at the combine.
You're out
but
here
I'm
rocking
just
the
walking
Colts
through.
hoodie.
Yes, I'm the chaplain to the Indianapolis Colts.
Outstanding.
The Catholic chaplain, I should say.
All denominations welcome in the
Yes,
National
sir.
Football League.
Yes, sir.
Of course. Well, Father, we really do appreciate you sitting down. Happy Ash Wednesday, and
likewise to you.
Continue to do great works. Lucas, how about that? Now you're the heathen back there in the
It's just me.
studio.
Now it's just me. That's great. That's great. Can we get somebody up here to our studio in Nashville?
No, we can't. Father, I do appreciate you sitting down.
take
with
care
us.
of yourself.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation if you like. How about that, Lucas? How about that? That's Mac. Thank you. We appreciate that. What a tremendous moment to do live on air, and now you can see it. Proof. Somebody sent a picture to my grandma, so she knows I got my ashes done.
I can't believe that.
You didn't burst into flames.
Kirby Allen. Yeah, it's entirely possible that my skin would have started to sizzle or something like that if Kirby had his way with it. But yes, hanging out here at the combine, getting ashes, talking shop. That's the goal. What a ridiculous thing that's just happened. So, with the situation around the Titans, how am I supposed to get back into sports talk after that? Like, what am I going to do there? Could you see that on camera?
Are Titans fans going to hold it against you? Blue just texted me. I think Titans fans might hold it against you that you're accepting blessings from a Colts priest.
Oh, well, and this is already a sore subject, right? Because, who do I bear a striking resemblance to, even though my hairline's better and I drool less?
Uh-oh.
Andrew Luck. So, the Andrew Luck doppelganger in the state that he was born in the state that he went to college in, being blessed by an Indianapolis Colts chaplain. Are Titans fans going to renounce me?
This could be your undoing.
What a ridiculous thing that's just happened here. This is why live radio is the best. So, as we try and somehow, I don't know how to gracefully transition back into quarterback talk, but
There's no way to.
Just do it. So, at this point, the Titans' situation for quarterback, there's not a quarterback situation. It's not off the table, basically, is what John Robinson said to us. And instead of me saying it poorly, why don't I let the GM tell you for himself how he feels about the quarterback position, given their circumstance with Tannehill and given what this draft class looks like.
No, I think we're always looking to add players to the team that we think, either from a developmental role can
texted you
a team, from a depth role can help the football team. Logan's certainly done. He's improved. Ryan's has made a bunch of great throws for us. He's played a lot of good football for us. Unfortunately, he had a bad game or two last year, and that sticks with you, especially when it's the last game of the year.
Recency bias is tough.
So and he knows he's got to be better, and I know he's going to work his tail off to be better and improve, just like all of our players are. But I think that position, you're always looking at that position because it's such an important position, maybe the most important position of the football team.
So that's Titans GM John Robinson there with us about, 20 minutes ago? No, about an hour ago. I've just completely lost track of time at this point, discussing the quarterback position. Now, he did meet with the rest of Titans media directly after us, and in fact, he had a third, it looks like, sidebar session where he seems to be getting fairly emotional. Lucas, you've just DM'd me a tweet, him tearing up a little bit, getting a little dusty when he's talking about what more they could have done in the 2020 season. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, saying that's what kind of keeps him up at night. He appreciates the trust from the fans and the franchise, but just a little bit unexpected there from what is typically very dry proceedings at the combine.
Yeah, a lot of times you come to these things with certain expectations because you've done enough of them and you've spoken to GMs and coaches over the years, and you understand that words are going to be spoken, but how much quality there is to the words is going to be different. Now, you're in a position, if you're John, where you have a lot of scrutiny on you at this particular time, right? And you've already gotten the extension from Amy Adams-Strunk, and not saying that the emotions are tied to financial security and things of that nature, but you're the guy for the foreseeable future. You and Mike Vrabel, that's the deal. So I'm interested. I wonder, they don't let us see stuff like that very often. And I shouldn't come at it skeptically. the way that it's almost in my nature to, but I'm kind of curious what portion of that, other than the fact that it ended in dramatic fashion, kind of keeps the Titans GM up at night, in his own words. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation as you like, but to know that the quarterback position is on the table, I mean, listen, Logan Woodside, you can't kill him, it would seem. He is the nuclear survivor of backup quarterbacks. They've run all manner of different players through that quarterback room to try and unseat him, whether it be Deshaun Kaiser, Trevor Siemian, Austin Davis a couple of years ago. Well, no, Austin Davis was during the Mariota tenure. But anyway, there have been Matt Barkley, like quarterbacks throughout the course of the last couple of years that they just have not been able to find a better option than Logan Woodside behind Ryan Tannehill. And I think in a perfect world, if you're a Titans fan, you're trying to figure out, okay, from people who are studying this at great length, you're asking the question, can I find a feasible succession plan to the current situation, understanding that the guy that you have, you're married to for at least another year, barring some unforeseeable or ridiculous, trade that goes down, which does not, based on the conversations here in Indianapolis, seem to be in the cards. You're looking at the idea, okay, can one of these developmental guys that we talked about, Carson Strong, for example, with Mark Schofield, the quarterback out of Nevada, how much you're waiting to see if he can improve substantially on his ball placement and accuracy, which of course is critical to success at the quarterback position, given that there is clearly raw talent there, but there are some things about his game, or at least where he is at this point in his career trajectory, some things that he needs to clearly and obviously improve upon before he can be a competent NFL starter. Those are the kind of questions. I mean, you heard Carmen's analysis, or maybe you didn't hear Carmen's analysis about Malik Willis, the Liberty quarterback, who she said she had one-on-one sit-down time with as a part of the Draft Network, and was very, very skeptical of the way that he described, or wasn't willing to describe, the film work that he had done with multiple teams, just kind of brushing off what is one of the most important portions of these in-person interviews with NFL talent evaluators. The quarterback conversation, even though it lacks the juice of normal years, is still going to be heavily discussed because, I mean, for the same reason that we've talked about the Steelers and their situation without Ben Roethlisberger, the Titans in a unique situation of their own, of course, in different quarterback. I mean, the team picking first overall in the draft has a quarterback on their roster, last year's first overall pick, that they haven't been able to successfully figure out how to help, and so much in doing so that they had to bring in a Super Bowl winning coach to try and salvage this player. This really is going to be the most intriguing portion of this, even as the position itself is not the most impressive from a pure talent standpoint. When you look at the way that NFL teams stack their boards and go through this, and where one team might have a player 15th overall and the other team might have him at 48. Like, there's a ton of variance every year, but this year more than any other. You wanna do the polls? You want to do that now? Is this what we're doing?
Let's do some polls.
We doing it live? All right, go ahead and give me the music.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Reising Show correspondent, Lucas. Pan, make that poll Zika.
Now, wait, before you go to the club. Wait, don't do it yet. Kirby, tell me what you just said off mic.
Worst impersonation ever. Now, I love Brett Bryant.
No, not after. I don't care what you said after the fact. Worst impersonation ever, you said?
That's the worst Cosell impersonation I've ever heard.
Well,
he goes into a little bit of his English accent in the middle of it. I'm just saying, I love Brett. But that one wasn't up to his regular delivery.
All right. Well, our dear friend Greg Cosell is going to be on the radio show at some point.
Nephew.
In the next 2 days. His nephew, Howard's nephew. We will. Should we have Greg? Greg's probably going to get sick of that real quick.
I think he heard it in the Super Bowl because I think we ran that for something.
Mine?
No. We ran that impersonation was in a piece that we were using when we were at the Super Bowl, and I think he heard it.
Oh, okay. What are the polls?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. By the way, we should have Kirby judge each of Rhett's impersonations for the remainder of the week while you're up in Indianapolis.
Why? So we can all be just completely and totally lost? No. Kirby Allen Kirby's judgments will be reserved for my game day outfits alone.
Well, I think you'll be much more impressed by Rhett's Forrest Gump accent.
the most problematic one we have of all
Yes,
of them.
that's the one.
Yeah. That one I'm sure he'd love. Keep it going.
What is the dumbest thing in sports this week? Puka says the MLB and the players who had months to work this out. Really, I'm just trying to sift through all of the ones that don't say the MLB and the MLBPA, and it's pretty much all of them.
No, I think we can say decisively that the dumbest thing in sports this week was baseball, and specifically Rob Manfred. And because he will be, despite how bad he looked publicly when he's up there smirking and chuckling before he gets on the microphone and says, "Hey, yeah, opening day. How many games total? 91 games as a part of the first 2 series for each team. Is that what you said?
91 games. Yeah.
91 total baseball games just evaporated in smoke, all with the smile of the commissioner as he turns his microphone on at the press conference. For that guy to know and why he is smiling, because he knows it's going to be turned back on the players, because people don't care. They just want somebody to get angry at. And if you tell them the players are the reason that the NFL or that the MLB can't move forward with this, Rob Manfred knows that eventually the heat's going to turn back on the workforce.
What skill position do the Titans need to upgrade the most? 71% say it's tight end, 29% say wide receiver, 0% say backup running back.
0.0.
That's right, not one vote for backup running back.
That is shocking to me. Do they not know what exists currently on the roster and that Deontay Foreman is technically not under contract? I bet not. That's a mistake.
Which 2022 QB draft prospect has the best shot to be a franchise quarterback? Clearly, nobody knows, given the poll results. I don't think anybody knows.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows
the
here.
NFL,
Are you kidding
period.
me?
That's right.
We're doing scientific polling on Twitter.com. Meanwhile, none of the paid professionals at the NFL scouting combine know who the hell QB1 is.
32% look past the small hands of Kenny Pickett and say it's him. 28% say Matt Corral. 28% say Malik Willis. 12% Desmond Ridder.
I'm judging it based off of media contingent around their podium when they were speaking. Kenny Pickett is the most apparently interesting quarterback to go talk to because he had the largest contingent of media vultures. Meanwhile, while we all waited 22 minutes for him to show up, so clearly game management issues.
If it wasn't for those damn hands.
Just those damn hands. It's just these tiny hands. The Whopper commercial. I love it.
What question would you ask Titans general manager John Robinson today? Josh says, how deep are the talks with Detroit to trade Lewan?
I wish I would have seen that. That would have been great because I know that John may not have an outright Twitter account, but I know he scrolls, so he probably saw me take his left tackle out at the knees the other day.
Cyrus said, what are your plans in regards to retaining Harold Landry, which we did ask, and John Robinson essentially said we've had discussions. We want to keep Harold.
Indeed, that is the case, which is good news if you're Titans fans, but also remember that he did bring up, and I thought that was an interesting point to make, is that, Harold does a lot for our defense, but also our defense helps Harold a lot. So, a little bit of positioning in real time on the radio interview.
Schwilly Mack asks, why haven't we fired Todd Downing yet?
Well, are we not past this? It's not happening. It's March. You're 2 months removed from your football team losing. Get over it.
Hey, I'm just proud of this fan base for not peppering the replies when we asked what skill position they need to upgrade most with quarterback. We didn't get one of those.
Not one. What an upset. It seems we finally worn them down. Are those the polls?
Those are the polls.
Okay.
Yep.
Those are the polls, but that's not the end of the show because Mike Vrabel's at the podium. We're going to carry it for you. Coming up next. segment here on 104.5 The Zone. First day of our Combine coverage, but it doesn't end here. Scoreboard Bar and Grill has us broadcasting live tomorrow and Friday as well. Of course, I'll be here all weekend long making sure you get some great stuff as well. We'll be pumping out prospect interviews and discussions on the 104.5 The Zone social media accounts. You can make sure that you're keeping up with those by following at 104.5 The Zone on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram as well. I don't believe we're on TikTok yet, but I'm sure that's Will Bowling's next project. If not, we should be. Get to it, Will. Just chirping things at me off the microphone. We are currently in a holding pattern for Mike Vrabel and his press conference that will be live streamed from the podium, so we'll get you over to Mike as soon as he takes the stand, for lack of a better term. Lucas, in the meantime, let's make it hyper-local, shall we? I think we've talked enough football for one day, even though there will be plenty more football to come. Have you seen what's happening in a feud between local media and a high school hockey team? Have you seen this?
Yeah, I've caught wind of this. It's a very odd scenario. Ravenwood Hockey has apparently blocked every media member in the city of Nashville and then come out and apologized for doing so on Twitter.
What do we think? So if anybody at Ravenwood Hockey is listening to the sound of my voice right now, I would love to know who manages the social media account. I would love to know what we have said in the past. I mean, by the way, our 1-year anniversary is tomorrow. Did you make sure to ship me something nice?
Well, your 1-year anniversary is tomorrow. Mine is on Friday.
Whoa. So you're copping out? Because I spent the first 2 days of the show with Schaefer. You're copping out on our 1 year?
The first day of the show with Schaefer, I believe, and then day 2 is when I joined you.
This is unacceptable. I feel like I've been left at the altar. Despicable what you've done. I got
Maybe
you
we'll
a
have
present.
something for Thursday.
No, it's too late now. I got you a present.
Oh, you got me something?
Hell yes. What do you mean? These are these are things that are not important to anybody listening to this radio show, other than the fact that you've had to deal with me for a year. Congratulations to you. We're very happy to still be employed and on the air. It's an upset. If you were betting on us, probably not a wise investment. We're still here. We're still here. But this Ravenwood Hockey situation, I thought it was so funny because people were starting to put screenshots. I saw J. Martin Ramon did it. Emily Proud, who's the least offensive of the Nashville media members, actually she takes some low-key shots on social media every once in a while. So maybe M's Twitter fingers got a little too hot. But I was laughing out loud to discover that I was also blocked by Ravenwood High School Hockey in ways that I cannot figure out. This is a slight that I was not expecting. But we will see if Ravenwood reaches out to the collective Nashville sports media with an explanation of why we were slighted this way.
Listen, if this was intentional by Ravenwood Hockey, then a hat tip to Ravenwood Hockey, because what are we doing right now while you're live at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis? We're talking about Ravenwood High School Hockey.
Great pub. Just don't log on to social media. Don't get blocked. I wanna wrap up. Because it does look like Mike Vrabel is not going to be at the podium while we're on air, so we'll make sure to bring you the best of his comments tomorrow. We'll have that audio available to you, and we'll regale you. Actually, he just went live, Lucas. Do you want to do it for 3 minutes? You want to go out there live?
Once I have it.
Up to you. Okay, you let me know when you've got it, and we'll toss it out there for a hot second. I honestly think, buddy, it's not worth it. We can do it tomorrow. Let's just bank it. Lucas is too busy wrapped up. I don't think it's worth it at this point. We will maybe Blaine and Mickey will carry the bulk of the comments from Titans head coach Mike Vrabel at the podium live, because they will be up next. But I do want Titans fans and football fans in Nashville to hear from Traylon Burks, the wide receiver from Arkansas, who is getting a lot of draft comps to A.J. Brown. And when we talk about NFL teams and their talent evaluation process, it does seem that the Titans have a type when it comes to wide receivers. Taller,
Can't play the audio.
Longer, big body guys. Lucas is telling me that the audio is not usable that I got today. So
taping Vrabel.
At this point, or rather taping Mike Vrabel, so basically he's been compared to A.J. Brown. And I want to know how married they are to this style of receiver, or if at some point there is going to be an adjustment made. Now, it was interesting to hear him talk about the wide receiver position, Traylon Burks, the wide receiver out of Arkansas, there's a lot of interesting receivers that can help this football team almost immediately, given how little you can rely upon consistently the availability of Julio Jones. And, for all of the praise in the world that Nick Westbrook-Akina deserves, you would much rather see him as your option number 4. But for guys who you're going to be paying attention to this week, Jahan Dotson, the wide receiver out of Penn State, who I am personally in favor of, pending any combine miscues that may occur. We'll check his testing out tomorrow, and as they begin to start testing later today. Traylon Burks is another one who very much fits the Titans mold at this point. And a lot of we haven't talked a lot about the tight ends in ways that I think is going to be a big focal point tomorrow. We'll get some more of our draft analyst friends on the show to break this down at great length. But given that there's no really discernible tight end 1 in this draft class, and the idea that the Tennessee Titans are without a second-round pick, there are going to be guys who go on day 2 and even on day 3 in the earlier rounds on day 3 that can absolutely help this football team. But in the position that the Tennessee Titans are currently in, how much more difficult does that make their lives to be able to address a position that is clearly and obviously a need? I think 71% of the audience, you said, Lucas, voted on the idea that tight end is the position that most needs to be upgraded on that offense. Offensive line is not an option that we gave people, but obviously the protection is a big part of that too. I don't know how they can continue to survive so bare bones at that position, especially after they punted on drafting one last year. I didn't get that at all. I didn't get them waiting until the 4th round to trade up and draft Des Fitzpatrick, but, we will see how these things kind of manifest and how they play out. Tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. We'll be live here in Indianapolis as well. Eddie O'Reilly, the Titans fan who has been based out of Ukraine and has been making his way out of the country as Russia invades, he's going to be on the radio show on a bus tomorrow, Lucas. He's going to yet another country or another city. He's in transit.
Yeah, he'll be on his way, I believe, to Germany when we speak to him tomorrow. So it's been quite a journey for the O'Reilly family for the last week or so.
So we're going to find out more about that journey tomorrow. Obviously, more prospect discussion and the latest on the Tennessee Titans live from the Combine. More great guests, but you know who's going to keep killing it because our time here is done. Blaine and Mickey got you the rest of the way on this Wednesday, and I will talk to you tonight on the Primetime Show. And if not, catch you on the radio tomorrow at 10.